The massive crystal towers of Zephyria Prime stretched toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the largest tower, 12 different alien species sat around a circular table that glowed with soft blue light. This was the Galactic Council, and they had ruled the known galaxy for over 3,000 years. Council Speaker Vex Thera stood at the center of the room. Her forearms moved in graceful patterns as she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of authority that had crushed 100 civilizations. The Colonian leader's skin was dark green and covered in small scales that caught the light with each movement. "Fellow council members," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber, "we have a problem that grows larger each day. The humans continue to spread across our galaxy like a disease." The other council members shifted in their seats. Some nodded in agreement while others whispered among themselves. The Altarians, with their tall, thin bodies and silver skin, looked nervous. The Zephyrians, who looked almost human except for their bright yellow eyes, seemed worried. "How many worlds do they control now?" asked Councillor Thexmon of the Rigel Empire. His massive bulk filled his chair, and his 6 eyes focused on a holographic display that appeared above the table. 47 worlds, and growing," replied Vex Thera. "In just 50 years, they have claimed more territory than most species acquire in 500 years. Their population grows at a rate we have never seen before." The holographic display showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies, and there were indeed many of them. They spread out from a small blue world called Earth like drops of blood in water. "Their technology is primitive," said Councillor Yexandra of the Centauri Federation. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Their ships are slow and their weapons are weak. Why should we concern ourselves with such a young species?" Vex Thera's scaled face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Because, dear Yexandra, primitive does not mean harmless. Look at these reports." New images appeared in the air above the table. They showed human factories, human cities, and human ships. The ships were indeed smaller than council vessels, but there were so many of them. "They build faster than we thought possible," Vex Thera continued. "Their factories never stop working. Their people never stop having children. And most concerning of all, they never stop asking questions." Questions? This came from Councillor Mexthor of the Vega Collective. His large head was covered in what looked like blue fur, and his 3 mouths all spoke at the same time, creating an odd harmony. "Yes, questions," Vex Thera said. "They question everything. They question their own leaders, they question nature, they question the very laws of physics. This makes them dangerous. A species that questions everything will eventually question us." The council chamber fell silent. For 3,000 years they had maintained order through a simple system. Young species were allowed to grow until they became strong enough to be useful. Then the council would demand tribute. The tribute always started small but grew larger over time until the species had no choice but to obey completely. "What do you propose?" asked Councillor Dex Villa of the Tau Ceti Union. She was one of the few council members who looked somewhat like a human, except for her pale blue skin and the fact that she had no hair anywhere on her body. "The same thing we have always done," Vex Thera replied. "We make them pay tribute. We take their resources, their technology, and their military strength. We make them dependent on us for survival." "But they are so far away," protested Yexandra. "Our nearest military base is 3 sectors from their territory. It would take months to bring our fleets to bear if they refuse." Vex Thera's forearms spread wide. "Then we make sure they do not refuse. We demand tribute that they cannot possibly refuse. We start with something that will hurt them but not destroy them. We take their rare metals, we take their technology blueprints, and we take half of their military ships." The other council members began to nod. This was how it had always been done. No species had ever refused tribute demands. The cost of refusal was always made clear from the beginning. "I will prepare the message," Vex Thera said. "We will give them 30 standard days to comply. That should be enough time for them to understand the wisdom of cooperation." Far away from the crystal towers of Zephyria Prime, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty. The ship was humanity's pride and joy, the largest and most advanced vessel they had ever built. It was still small compared to council ships, but it was fast and its crew was skilled. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been in space for most of his adult life, first as an explorer and then as a military officer. He had seen many wonders among the stars, but he had also seen the darker side of galactic civilization. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Commander Beth Taylor from the communications station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from an unknown source. It's coming from the direction of Council space." Jake nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The key image that appeared showed Vexithera standing in the council chamber. Her forearms were folded across her chest, and her scaled face showed no emotion at all. "Greetings, humans of Earth," she began. "I am Council Speaker Vexithera, and I speak for the Galactic Council that has maintained peace and order in this galaxy for 3,000 years. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about the Galactic Council from other species, but this was the first time they had contacted humanity directly. "Your species has grown rapidly and claimed much territory," Vexithera continued. "This growth must now be regulated for the good of all galactic citizens. Therefore, the Council demands that humanity pay tribute as all civilized species do." The demands that followed made Jake's blood run cold. Rare metals worth billions of credits, technology blueprints that had taken decades to develop, and worst of all, half of humanity's military fleet to be decommissioned and handed over to Council forces. "You have 30 standard days to comply with these demands," Vexithera concluded. "Refusal will result in corrective measures that will be far more costly than simple compliance. The Council has spoken." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all staring at the blank screen with expressions of shock and growing anger. "Sir," said Beth Taylor quietly. "What do we do now?" Jake took a deep breath. He had spent his life serving humanity and protecting human colonies from pirates and natural disasters. Now they faced something far worse than pirates or storms. They faced a choice between freedom and survival. "We contact Earth," he said finally, "and we let our leaders know that humanity just received its first ultimatum from the galaxy." The emergency session hall in Geneva buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from every human colony had gathered within 48 hours of receiving the Council's message. The large circular room had been built to hold meetings about trade disputes and colonial policies. Nobody had ever imagined it would be used to decide humanity's fate. President John Baker sat at the center of the room, his weathered face showing the strain of sleepless nights. Around him sat the most important people in human space. Military. Commanders, scientists, politicians, and business leaders all waited for the discussion to begin. Admiral Jake Morrison had arrived from the USS Liberty just hours earlier. He still wore his space uniform, and his tired eyes showed the weight of what he had witnessed. Next to him sat General Kate Williams, the head of Earth's defense forces. Her short blonde hair was pulled back tightly, and her jaw was set in a hard line. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Baker began, his voice carrying clearly through the room, "we all know why we are here. For the first time in human history, we face a threat that could end our civilization as we know it." Dr. Lisa Carter stood up from her seat near the front. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes. As humanity's leading expert on alien species, her opinion carried great weight. "I have spent the last 2 days studying everything we know about the Galactic Council," she said, activating a holographic display. "What I found should terrify all of us." The display showed images of different alien species. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that it hurt to look at them. But they all had one thing in common. Their eyes looked empty, defeated. "These are the Altarians before they joined the Council," Dr. Carter continued, pointing to an image of proud-looking, silver-skinned beings. "And this is them now." The second image showed the same species, but they looked smaller somehow, as if the life had been drained out of them. "The pattern is always the same," she explained. "First comes the tribute demand. The species usually complies because the alternative seems worse. But the tribute never stops growing. After a few decades, they find themselves completely dependent on the Council for everything. Senator Maria Rodriguez from the Mars colonies raised her hand. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Dr. Carter, surely you are not suggesting that all negotiation is useless. The Council has ruled for 3,000 years. They must have some wisdom we can learn from. Several people nodded in agreement. Senator Rodriguez had built her career on finding peaceful solutions to difficult problems. Her success in ending the Mars mining wars had made her famous throughout human space. With respect, Senator, Dr. Carter replied, wisdom and age do not always go together. I have found evidence that the Council's member species have made almost no technological progress in the last 1,000 years. Their innovation has been crushed by the very system they now enforce. Admiral Morrison stood up, his tall frame commanding attention. The senator raises a good point about negotiation, he said. But we need to understand what we are negotiating with. I have spoken with traders who have dealt with Council species. They describe governments that are afraid to make any decision without approval from the Council. Captain Ben Taylor, commander of the Outer Rim colonies, leaned forward in his seat. He was a young man with sandy hair and sharp blue eyes. His colonies were the farthest from Earth and the most independent. Admiral Morrison is right, Captain Taylor said, but there is something else we need to consider. My exploration teams have been mapping Council territory for years. Their military bases are old, sometimes centuries old. Their ships follow the same patterns they have used for generations. Engineer Sam Collins, representing the industrial colonies, pulled up his own display. He was a big man with calloused hands and a practical manner. I have been running numbers since we got the tribute demand, he said. If we give them what they want, it will set back human expansion by at least 50 years. Our colonies will barely have enough resources to survive, let alone grow. But if we refuse, Senator Rodriguez countered, we face military action from a force that has conquered the entire galaxy. How can we possibly win such a war? The room fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. Humanity had maybe 2,000 military ships scattered across 47 worlds. The Council commanded the resources of hundreds of species across thousands of worlds. Dr. Carter spoke up again. There is one thing I discovered that might change our thinking, she said. The Council's unity is not as strong as it appears. I have found evidence of unrest on several member worlds. The Zephyrians in particular have been questioning the tribute system. General Williams had been quiet until now, but she finally stood up. Her voice was steady and strong. I have been listening to all of your arguments, she said, and I keep coming back to one simple question. What kind of future do we want for our children? She walked to the center of the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. If we comply with this tribute, we become servants. Our children will grow up knowing that humanity bows to alien masters. Is that the legacy we want to leave? But if we fight and lose, Senator Rodriguez said, our children might not grow up at all. Maybe, General Williams replied. But at least they will know that their parents stood up for what was right. They will know that humanity chose freedom over safety. The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued about military strength, economic impact, and moral responsibility. Some wanted to negotiate for better terms. Others wanted to refuse completely. A few even suggested abandoning the outer colonies and retreating to the inner systems. President Baker listened to every argument. He asked questions and took notes, but he did not reveal his own thoughts. The decision would ultimately be his, but he wanted to hear from everyone first. As the day wore on, patterns began to emerge. The older politicians tended to favor negotiation and compromise. The military leaders wanted to prepare for war. The scientists were divided, with some believing humanity could innovate their way out of the problem while others thought the odds were impossible. But there was something else emerging from the discussion. A growing anger at the idea that humanity should submit to demands from species they had never even met. These aliens had never asked to be friends or trading partners. They had simply announced that humanity must pay tribute or face destruction. As the sun set over Geneva, President Baker finally stood up. The room fell silent as everyone waited to hear what he would say. "We will continue this discussion tomorrow," he announced. "But I want everyone to think about one thing tonight. In all our history, humans have faced impossible odds before. We have always found a way to survive and even thrive. The question we must answer is this: are we still the same species that crossed oceans in wooden ships and reached for the stars with primitive rockets?" The representatives filed out of the room in small groups, still discussing and arguing. But there was something different in their voices now. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else, something that had not been there when the day began. It was the sound of humans who were getting angry. The second day of the emergency session began before dawn. President Baker had spent the night walking through the empty halls of the government building, thinking about the choice that lay before humanity. Outside, the Swiss mountains were covered in morning mist, but inside the meeting hall the air was electric with tension. The representatives took their seats with grim faces. Everyone knew that today would bring a decision that would change human history forever. The Galactic Council's deadline was now only 26 days away, and long-range sensors had detected alien warships gathering at the edge of human space. President Baker stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back. He had made his decision during the long night, but first he wanted to hear from his military commanders. "Admiral Morrison," he said, "please tell us about our defensive capabilities." The Admiral activated a holographic display showing human space. Red dots marked military bases and fleet positions. Blue lines showed patrol routes and supply chains. It looked impressive until you remembered that they were facing an enemy with thousands of years of experience. "Mr. President," Admiral Morrison began, "I need to share something that has been classified until now. For the past 10 years, our engineers have been working on a secret project." A murmur went through the room. Even the highest-ranking officials had not heard about this. "When we first encountered alien technology through crashed ships and debris, we did not just study it," the Admiral continued. "We improved it. Our scientists found ways to make their weapons more powerful and their shields stronger. The USS Liberty and 12 other ships have been equipped with these improvements." Dr. Carter leaned forward in her seat. "Admiral, are you saying we have technology that is better than what the Council uses?" "In some ways, yes," Admiral Morrison replied. "Their technology is old and standardized. They have not innovated in centuries. Our improvements are small individually, but together they might give us an advantage in battle." General Williams stood up, her face showing a mixture of pride and concern. "The Admiral is right about our technological advances," she said, "but we need to be realistic about numbers. Even with better weapons, we are still vastly outnumbered, Captain." Taylor from the Outer Rim colonies raised his hand. "General, what if we are not just fighting for ourselves? Dr. Carter mentioned unrest among the Council's member species. What if we could turn this into a larger rebellion?" Dr. Carter nodded enthusiastically. "Captain Taylor is onto something important," she said. "I have been in secret contact with dissidents from 3 different Council species. The Zephyrians, the Altarians, and even some Colonian colonies are tired of the tribute system." This caused excited whispers throughout the room. The idea that humanity might have allies had not occurred to most of the representatives. "What exactly are they offering?" asked Senator Rodriguez. "Coordination," Dr. Carter replied. "If we refuse the tribute demand and survive the first Council attack, they will rise up in rebellion on their own worlds. The Council would face revolts across dozens of systems." Engineer Collins pulled up economic projections on his display. "This changes everything," he said. "If multiple species rebel simultaneously, the Council's resources would be spread thin. They could not bring their full strength against us." President Baker listened to the discussion with growing interest. What had seemed like a choice between submission and certain death was becoming something else entirely. It was becoming an opportunity to change the galaxy. "There is something else to consider," said General Williams. "Our exploration ships have mapped Council territory better than they know. We have found weaknesses in their supply lines and identified their most important military bases. Admiral Morrison nodded. If we are going to fight, we need to strike fast and hard, hit their command centers and communication networks before they can coordinate a response. Senator Rodriguez stood up, her face troubled. You are all talking about starting a galactic war, she said. Millions of beings could die. Are we prepared for that responsibility? The room fell silent. The senator's words carried weight because everyone knew she was right. What they were discussing would affect not just humanity, but every species in the galaxy. President Baker walked to the center of the room. His decision had been made during the night, but hearing the discussion had convinced him it was the right choice. Senator Rodriguez raises an important point, he said. War is terrible, and people will die. But sometimes the cost of peace is higher than the cost of war. He activated the main display, showing images of council member species that Dr. Carter had compiled. The progression from proud, independent peoples to submissive servants was clear in every case. The Galactic Council calls their system peace, President Baker continued. But look at these images. Is this peace, or is this death of the spirit? They have not just conquered these species. They have crushed their will to dream, to explore, to become something better. The president's voice grew stronger as he spoke. The council made a mistake when they chose to threaten humanity. They assumed we would react like every other species they have encountered. They assumed we would choose survival over freedom. General Williams stood up. Mr. President, if we are going to refuse their demands, we need to do more than just say no. We need to offer an alternative. Exactly right, General, President Baker replied. We will not just refuse to pay tribute. We will offer them something they have never encountered before. We will offer them partnership based on equality and mutual respect. Dr. Carter's eyes lit up with understanding. And if they refuse our partnership, we show them what happens when humans fight for their freedom. Engineer Collins was already working on calculations. Sir, if we are going to make this work, we need to move fast. Our industrial colonies can increase military production, but it will take time. Time we may not have. Admiral Morrison pointed out. The Council's advance fleet could arrive in 3 weeks. President Baker looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. He saw fear, but he also saw determination. These were the descendants of people who had crossed dangerous oceans and hostile continents to build new lives. They were the children of those who had reached for the stars when everyone said it was impossible. Then we make those 3 weeks count, he said. Admiral Morrison, prepare our fleets for battle. General Williams, coordinate with our allies among the Council species. Dr. Carter, draft our response to the tribute demand. And Engineer Collins, tell our factories to work around the clock. The President paused, looking at each person in the room. In 3 weeks, the Galactic Council will learn something new about humanity. They will learn that some things are worth fighting for, and freedom is at the top of that list. As the representatives filed out to begin their preparations, there was no more debate about what to do. Humanity had made its choice. They would rather fight as free beings than live as slaves. The die was cast, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Crystal Council chamber on Zephyria Prime had never been so quiet. 12 alien species sat around the glowing table, their attention focused on the human ambassador who stood in the center of the room. Ambassador Ryan Peterson was a calm man with silver hair and steady eyes. He had spent his career negotiating with difficult people, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Council Speaker Vexthara lounged in her chair, her forearms folded across her scaled chest. She expected to hear the usual pleading that came from species facing their first tribute demand. Perhaps the humans would ask for more time or try to negotiate smaller amounts. She had heard it all before. Honored Council, Ambassador Peterson began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I bring humanity's response to your tribute demand. The council members leaned forward slightly. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Another species would join their ranks of obedient servants. We reject your demand completely, Peterson said. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. For several seconds, nobody moved. Council Speaker Vexithara's scaled face showed confusion as if she had not heard correctly. I am sorry, she said finally. Did you say reject? Yes, Peterson replied calmly. Humanity rejects your tribute, demand. We will not give you our resources, our technology, or our ships. Instead, we offer you something better. Counselor Thexmon of the Rigel Empire slammed his massive fist on the table. You offer us something better? He roared. You are a primitive species that has barely left your home system. What could you possibly offer the Galactic Council? Peterson smiled slightly. We offer you partnership, real partnership based on mutual respect and shared benefits. We offer you the chance to join us in building a galaxy where all species can grow and prosper. The council chamber erupted in laughter. 12 different species made 12 different sounds, but they all expressed the same thing. The humans were clearly insane. Council Speaker Vexthera raised one of her 4 hands for silence. Ambassador Peterson, she said, her voice dripping with false kindness. You clearly do not understand the situation. We are not asking for your cooperation. We are demanding your tribute. You have no choice in this matter. We always have a choice, Peterson replied. That is what makes us human. Counselor Yexandra of the Centauri Federation stood up, her tall, thin form swaying slightly. You speak of choice, she said, her voice like wind chimes. But choice is a luxury for species that can defend themselves. You have perhaps 2,000 ships scattered across 47 worlds. We command the resources of an entire galaxy. Peterson nodded politely. Your numbers are accurate, Counselor, but numbers are not everything. We have studied your military records. Your fleets are large, but they are also predictable. Your tactics have not changed in centuries. This comment caused angry muttering around the table. No species had ever dared to criticize Council military doctrine. Furthermore, Peterson continued, we have something your other subjects never had. We have hope. He activated a small device, and holographic images filled the chamber. The images showed scenes from human colonies, factories working at full capacity, shipyards launching new vessels, families saying goodbye to loved ones joining the military. While you have been gathering your fleets, Peterson said, we have been preparing. Our industrial capacity has increased by 300% in the last 3 weeks. Our shipyards are producing vessels with technology you have never seen. Council Speaker Vexisthera's eyes narrowed. What technology could you possibly have that we do not? Peterson smiled. Innovation, Council Speaker. For 3,000 years, your species have been forbidden to improve or change. They build the same ships, use the same weapons, follow the same tactics. We have taken your old technology and made it better. The images changed, showing technical specifications and weapon test results. The council members studied the data with growing concern. These were not the crude weapons of a primitive species. Impossible, breathed Councillor Mexthor of the Vega Collective. These energy readings are beyond anything in our databases. Nothing is impossible when free minds work together, Peterson replied. But we have not come here just to boast about our weapons. We have come to offer you one last chance for peace. He walked closer to the council table, making eye contact with each member. Join us in building a new kind of galactic civilization, one where species work together because they choose to, not because they are forced to. Council Speaker Vexithara stood up, her forearms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. Enough of this madness, she declared. You are one species against hundreds. You are children playing with toys against adults who have ruled the galaxy for millennia. Are we? Peterson asked quietly. Because I have been in contact with representatives from several of your member species. They are tired of the tribute system. They are ready for change. This statement caused real alarm among the council members. They began speaking to each other in their native languages, their voices rising in concern. The Zephyrians remember what freedom felt like, Inaura Peterson continued. The Altarians still dream of the stars they once explored. Even some of your Colonian colonies are questioning why they should pay tribute to masters who give nothing in return. Councillor Dex Villa of the Tau Ceti Union leaned forward. You are lying, she said. but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Peterson asked. "Check your communication networks. See how many worlds have gone silent in the last week. See how many of your tribute collectors have failed to report in." The council members looked at each other with growing unease. They had indeed noticed some communication problems, but they had assumed it was just technical difficulties. Peterson activated his device again. This time the images showed council member worlds, but these were not the submissive populations the council expected to see. These were crowds of beings holding signs and chanting slogans. They were protests and demonstrations on dozens of worlds. "The galaxy is changing," Peterson said. "The age of tribute is ending. You can either change with it, or you can try to stop it with force. But understand this. If you choose force, you will not just be fighting humanity. You will be fighting everyone who dreams of freedom." Council Speaker Vexithara's scaled face had turned a darker shade of green. "This is treason," she hissed. "You are inciting rebellion against lawful authority." "I am offering hope to the hopeless," Peterson replied. "I am reminding enslaved species that they were once free." The council speaker's forearms began to shake with rage. "You have made your choice, humans. You have chosen war over wisdom. Very well. Our fleets will show you the price of defiance." Peterson nodded sadly. "I hoped you would choose differently, but we are prepared for your response." He activated his device one final time. The holographic display showed the location of every council military base, every supply depot, every communication relay. The information was detailed and accurate. "How did you get this?" demanded Councillor Thexmon. "We asked nicely," Peterson replied. "It is amazing what people will tell you when they trust you." Council Speaker Vexithara stood up, her full height making her look even more intimidating. "Leave this chamber," she commanded. "Return to your ships and flee to the edge of the galaxy. Perhaps if you run far enough, you will live to see another year." Ambassador Peterson bowed politely. "I will convey your response to my government. But before I go, let me leave you with one final thought." He looked around the chamber at the 12 species that had ruled the galaxy for so long. "You have built your power on fear, but fear only works as long as people believe you are stronger than they are. Today, that belief ends." As Peterson walked toward the chamber exit, his footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. The council members watched him go, but none of them spoke. They were all thinking the same thing. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council was afraid. The space around Proxima Junction had never seen so many warships in one place. The Galactic Council's advance fleet stretched across the darkness like a metal constellation. At its center was the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion, a ship so large that it cast shadows on the smaller vessels around it. For 3,000 years, this ship had been the symbol of council power. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the enemy fleet approach on his tactical display. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They all knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of humanity. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Commander Beth Taylor from the communications station, "we are receiving a transmission from the Eternal Dominion." "Put it on screen," Admiral Morrison replied. The image that appeared showed Council Speaker Vexithara standing on the bridge of her flagship. Her forearms were spread wide, and her scaled face showed complete confidence. "Admiral Morrison," she began, her voice carrying across space. "I offer you one final opportunity to surrender. Order your ships to stand down, and I will allow your crews to live as servants in the Council fleet." Admiral Morrison stepped forward, his gray hair catching the light from the display screens. "Council Speaker, I have a counteroffer. Withdraw your forces now, and we will allow you to return home with your dignity intact." Vexithara's laughter echoed through the Liberty's bridge. "You face the greatest military force in galactic history with a handful of primitive ships, and you speak of dignity. Very well, human. Learn the price of defiance." The transmission ended, and the Council fleet began to move forward. The Eternal Dominion led the charge, its massive weapons already beginning to glow with deadly energy. "All ships," Admiral Morrison announced over the fleet communication channel. "Remember what we are fighting for. We fight for the right to choose our own path among the stars. The first shots came from the Council fleet. Bright beams of energy lanced across space toward the human ships. But something unexpected happened. The human vessels did not try to dodge the attacks. Instead, they absorbed the energy with shields that flickered with strange patterns. What? Vexithera's voice came over an open channel. How are their shields holding? Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. Fire at will, he ordered. The human response was immediate and devastating. Weapons that looked similar to Council designs unleashed, energy far beyond anything the aliens had seen. The first Council ship to be hit simply vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. Impossible, Vexithera screamed. Those weapons cannot exist. But they did exist, and they were tearing through the Council fleet like fire through paper. The humans had indeed taken Council technology and improved it beyond recognition. Where the aliens had used brute force, humans had used precision. Where the aliens had relied on size, humans had chosen speed and efficiency. The battle that was supposed to last for days was over in less than 2 hours. Council ships exploded or surrendered one by one. The mighty Eternal Dominion, symbol of galactic oppression for 3 millennia, drifted powerless through space with its engines dead and its weapons destroyed. Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to the crippled flagship. Council Speaker Vexithera, do you surrender? The response was a mix of rage and disbelief. This is not possible, she said. We have ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. We cannot be defeated by children who just learned to build starships. You ruled through fear, Admiral Morrison replied. But fear only works when people believe in it. Today that belief died. As news of the battle spread across the galaxy, something remarkable happened. On world after world, the subject species of the Galactic Council rose up in rebellion. The Zephyrians declared independence from their tribute obligations. The Altarians seized control of their government buildings. Even some Colonian colonies turned against their own empire. Dr. Lisa Carter watched the reports coming in from her command center on Earth. Each message brought news of another world throwing off. The chains of Council rule. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had dared to hope. Dr. Carter called out one of her assistants. We are receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian homeworld. The image that appeared showed a tall being with bright yellow eyes and skin that seemed to glow with inner light. This was Prime Minister Lexandra of the newly free Zephyrian Republic. Dr. Carter, the alien leader said, we cannot thank humanity enough for what you have done. For the first time in 1,000 years, our children will grow up free. Similar messages came in from dozens of worlds. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were tasting freedom for the first time. They spoke of dreams they could now pursue and ideas they could now explore. President John Baker addressed the galaxy from the United Nations building in New York. His words were broadcast to every inhabited world, carried by communication networks that the Council could no longer control. To all the species of the galaxy, he began, today marks the beginning of a new age, an age where cooperation replaces coercion, where partnership replaces domination. He paused, looking directly into the camera. We invite all free species to join us in building something that has never existed before, a galactic community based on mutual respect and shared prosperity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, representatives from 50 different species had requested permission to send ambassadors to Earth. They wanted to learn about this new form of government that humans called democracy. Engineer Sam Collins worked around the clock to establish communication networks between the newly free worlds. Trade agreements were signed. Scientific information was shared freely. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy buzzed with innovation and creativity. The Galactic Council, reduced to a handful of core worlds, tried desperately to maintain their authority. But their military was broken, their economy was collapsing, and their subjects had abandoned them. Council Speaker Vexithera found herself ruling over empty palaces, while the galaxy moved forward without her. Within 6 months, the Galactic Alliance was formally established. Unlike the old Council, it had no supreme ruler and demanded no tribute. Member species contributed what they could and received help when they needed it. Decisions were made by democratic vote rather than imperial decree. Admiral Morrison, now serving as humanity's representative to the Alliance Council, stood in the new chambers on the neutral world of Haven Station. Around him sat representatives from over 200 species, all working together to solve the problems of galactic civilization. "The tribute age is over," he announced to the assembly. "The age of freedom has begun." The chamber erupted in cheers from 100 different species. The sound echoed through the station and out into space, carrying a message of hope to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity had kept their promise. They had not just won their own freedom, they had brought freedom to the stars themselves. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what the humans had intended. In the end, the Council had been right about one thing. Humanity's reply had indeed shaken the galaxy, but instead of bringing destruction, it had brought something far more powerful. It had brought hope.